Cool. Just like that, we will jump right on in.
Boom.
I'm here today with Mosha Morgan. Super, super excited to have you on. This is like kind of the first one where it's not just like one of my friends or somebody that I have a lot in common with. So it's going to be like a little more exciting for me to learn a lot about kind of your life, really.
Totally.
I mean, we know each other from the gym and talking and passing, like, hey, how's it going? But never really sit down and get a dive deep into this kind of stuff. So why don't you give everybody a little bit of background so I don't butcher it all, but you're a super unique cat, and I'm excited to get to know you a little bit more.
For sure, yeah. Definitely excited to share and connect with you too, because, yeah, we're definitely on the same page on many levels. It seems like just kind of always running into each other. Like, it started, I think, just like rolling jits and seeing you at the gyms there, and then all of a sudden seeing you at different fitness centers and stuff. So yeah, good to connect and be here. So I'm Mosha Morgan, been here in Spokane for most of my life, originally out in Los Angeles, but pretty much raised here since I was like 6. So yeah, my life now is just I'm teaching yoga, and I've committed most of my life at this point towards psychedelic integration work.
Yeah.
And working with ayahuasca predominantly. But I'm also getting trained in how to support people in working with all psychedelics.
Okay.
So this is a budding field that's also very novel and new and interesting in a lot of different ways. So when I talk about what I do and like what I'm invested into, it's kind of confusing for people to like understand how and what that even is or what it is. So to kind of like break it down and make it a little more digestible, essentially we're in an interesting time of humanity where we're kind of going through this thing that's coined as the psychedelic renaissance or an archaic revival.
Yeah, no, stop you real quick.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
I just want to say I have a very, very, very rudimentary idea and understanding of kind of all this. So I'm kind of seeing it all out of left field. And so, yeah, get that out of the way. But you were saying it's a pretty new science and like new to these times, but which is so crazy to think about because it really is the first medicines ever invented. It's been stumbled upon by cavemen hundreds of thousands of years ago, and so really it's one of the longest things that have been around, and human beings as we know them have been kind of playing with this stuff. But yeah, finally it's starting to come around and being legal and understood and actually studied with the current day science. So
yeah, facts. Like all of that is like really in line with where I was about to take it, because essentially we have like two different revivals taking place. We have the more recent history of like the more psychedelic renaissance term, and that's kind of like the more recent history, last 50 years, where essentially like research around psychedelics started around 1943 when LSD was created accidentally. And for about 20 years, we invested money and research into LSD and psilocybin mushrooms was the main focus. And then it later brought other substances into it, MDMA and DMT. But for about 20 years, there was research being done, and there was a lot of curiosity and interest in psychedelics for the psychiatrics and like mental health and helping support people in psychology. And then about 20 years later, we ran into the situation where it was the Vietnam War, actually, and there was a lot of anti-war counterculture upbringing or uprising that was unfolding that was kind of correlated to psychedelics through the like government and just we'll say mainstream culture kind of had some red flags in what these hippies or anyone who was doing psychedelics was up to. So essentially what ended up happening was all the research got closed down, and then we got classifications of psychedelics going in towards Schedule 1, becoming a categorized drug that has no medical value and has addictive tendencies.
So what was that big push to kind of put all that to a raging stop? Like, what stopped it, made it so bad all of a sudden?
Okay, so essentially, it's highly political. Basically, we have a lot of political agendas and interests that are for profit. And I'll say that this isn't all 100% substantiated or facts. I should say that there's a lot of controversy around this for sure.
Yeah.
But if you kind of just look at the situation, it becomes pretty obvious what happened. So that being that there was a political agenda to keep our interest in Vietnam, in war, in subservient like efforts, as far as just like keeping humanity more willing to listen to what the government was trying to unfold as far as laws and such. And so you got the counterculture, who's basically like so interested. They're mostly interested in just sovereignty and like self-agency or autonomy, and they're not easily controllable.
Yeah.
And so there's like right there you kind of have like a divergent in the culture, and then you have that kind of leading towards the political agenda of just classifying or categorizing some of these psychedelics as a Schedule 1 substance that no longer can be available to the public, so because it was on a trajectory of like making complications for political agendas.
Mm-hmm. And then so making it illegal makes it hard to get pure stuff, makes it hard to keep doing science on it and get better research, and so it's screwed all of a sudden.
Yeah, so basically once it got categorized as Scheduled 1, it did get studied still for I think just like a year or two, and then after that it just like completely they banned all the research. Yeah, everything pretty much got shut down completely. And that was about 1968, I believe. And then then from 1968 for about another 30 years, 68, 20 years, there was no research at all. Anything that happened with psychedelics all just closed. Jeez. Still some underground things unfolding, obviously. Counterculture still existed. People are still doing what they're doing, but now it's illegal, and now you're going to go to prison or jail or anything if you get caught.
Ugh. And yeah, one other thing that I thought about is when you said it was all kind of started around the Vietnam War, like the little I know about psychedelics is if you're partaking and you know anything about it, the last thing you want is war and conflict.
Exactly.
This world being full of hate and spewing hate and evil against each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like, okay, let's get this out, let's brush this under the rug because this makes us money.
Mm-hmm.
This makes us money. This makes us money.
Exactly. So for profit, and so including in psychedelics too, people don't really think of it as a psychedelic, but marijuana is also in this category. So as we know, marijuana now is just like it's abundant, it's everywhere. We know the medical value of it. We know that it's supporting so many different situations with disease and such, and it also was pulled into this category with the other psychedelics that I mentioned before. So as we've kind of hit this new point of revival, as I mentioned, there's like the psychedelic renaissance that's been unfolding for like the last 20 years. They restarted the research now to where we're able to substantiate some of the medical value around why and how these substances are applicable towards mental health situations or towards even just self-growth or spiritual quests, whatever it is that you're turning to the medicine or the substances for. And so all that kind of recent history, we'll say that's the last like 60 years, we'll call that the psychedelic renaissance. And then, as I mentioned before, there's also the archaic revival, which where you were kind of alluding towards, which is like the original medicine, like the because that's just 60 years. And then we have our original medicines like ayahuasca, which I'm sure we'll touch on and get into, San Pedro or peyote cactus, Native American cactus, and then psilocybin mushrooms, predominantly those three, and then iboga, which is another one that most people don't know a whole lot about. But there's basically substantiation and evidence that these medicines have been existing for 3,000 plus years. So ayahuasca is kind of the youngin of the bunch, actually. It's like more like 3,000, and then once you get into San Pedro or peyote and psilocybin, it gets over 5,000 years.
Damn. So it's been a minute.
It's been around, yeah. So I think that the earth technology or plant technology existing for that many years back is pretty remarkable. And then here we are, our young little humanity coming in, and then trying to get our heads wrapped around like what these even are, what are they capable of, what is the effect they have on our consciousness. And we're just like barely getting started.
Yeah. This might be too broad of a question and a little bit too early, but do you think it's kind of by chance that this has all been here for so long, or do you think that it's been there for us to find, for us to use its full potential, and then like because if there is something that powerful out in the universe, it kind of makes sense for there to be so much pushback of like something so powerful we just don't even want to unlock its potential because who knows what that's gonna kind of unveil and like just throw out into the universe that we don't even know. So it's just kind of like let's not worry about it. Do you like,
dude? Right there, the ramifications of what you just said is strong. It's very true. I believe that these technologies are here intentionally for sure, and that they are here specifically to help us evolve as a humanity. Yeah, so I mean, just wrap your head around that, right? Like here, we're talking about plants, funguses, cactuses. Those are the original plant medicines, the organic, natural ones. And then
yeah,
once you start talking about other things like LSD or ketamine, we're essentially just synthesizing and mimicking plants. Once you get into the synthetics, they act on the same brain receptors as the original medicines or the earth medicine. But yeah, that's how we use them traditionally speaking. So tribes in Peru, northern Native American tribes with peyote and such, Central America, Mexico, all these different indigenous cultures and tribes. It was common sense. It wasn't even a debate. It wasn't a conversation that we have to talk about on a podcast
yeah,
to like get ourselves to realize or even just like question. It was just a part of the culture.
right,
It was like, yeah, as actually as a rite of passage when you're like, say you're 12 years old, 13 years old, and you're gonna about to become a warrior. Guess what? Like, you know how you're gonna be a warrior? You're gonna eat some mushrooms and go take a nature walk into the
oof,
woods with your spear
all alone
and,
too.
and yeah, and
Oh
start
my
to
god.
communicate and get to know the forest, get to know yourself, your consciousness, and how it's intimately weaving and intuitively connected to nature and how to get out and have a trade-off with Earth that's gonna go fight for your survival and bring something back to contribute to the tribe or to your family. And so that's how they recognized it and saw it and had reverence around it. It wasn't really like something that people didn't do. It was something that was embedded or imbued deep into how they lived.
Yeah, yeah. There's not a whole lot of politics back when it was you get your food, you build shelter, you stay warm, you live, or you don't, you die. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's it. There's not many conflicts and stuff in there, so yeah, there's little room for pushback. But
Yeah.
speaking of these young bucks going out and kind of finding themselves, when was your first kind of psychedelic experience, and how did
Mm-hmm.
that kind of change your ideas of what we call, life and civilization now?
Yeah. So great question. My first psychedelic experience was right after my freshman year in high school, my summer between freshman year and sophomore year. So it was a little early for sure, I would say. And I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I was pretty curious and open minded, but I had no idea what was about to unfold. And I basically had a group of friends, and it was mentioned that we can get some shrooms.
Yeah.
And I remember that there was the four of us, and we spent the night at my buddy's house. Dude's dad did not know what was going on. We're having a little sleepover, and we went ahead and got ourselves a couple eighths of mushrooms, so 7 grams of mushrooms, and then went to our friend's house and waited for dad to chill out and start to wind down, and then we ate our mushrooms and had our experience, and it was pretty profound actually. It didn't take long before I got to a point in that first experience that I was just like, whoa, there's something else going on here other than me just like dabbling and like having this interesting thing with my friends. Because
Yeah.
I remember like laughing and like playing like air banjo and like laughing my ass off and just like tumbling and like tickling each other, like just silliest, like more play, like the most playful, ridiculous situation ever. And it was like so fun. But then going to the bathroom and like tripping out and like looking at myself in the mirror and like kind of like seeing my aura and like my energy and just being like, what am I, like, wow, what is going on here? And then like first experience, like these like little like hints kind of coming in that way. And then and then I understand, yeah, I remember coming out and like trying to like pose like big questions like to the friends of like what is life, like
Oh
it's just kind
no.
of going in that direction of
Uh-huh.
like there's something deep here, guys, like oh my gosh. So very pivotal and strong impact that had right out the gate. um and I don't think I did it like after I had like a really positive experience. It was awesome, and then I wasn't too like um too motivated to like go back and have that experience too soon because it felt so profound, and like I was just like wow, like that's good, I'm
And that
good.
like lingered with you and stuck with you and had you thinking a lot longer than it when it wore off.
Yeah, yeah, it felt like I was good for a while, and then yeah, that it had a good impact, and like basically I had kind of like my foundation set of like what that experience kind of was, and I wasn't mature or anything yet to like where like I could realize the ramifications of what I just stepped into, but it definitely set the tone for like what where my life was about to go for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had your first experience, and then so before that you didn't like you really just can't understand what's out there until you experience it. So once you experienced it, when did you kind of realize that you wanted to figure out what else is out there and just kind of steer you in this direction that you've ultimately followed the past years and years and years? What kind of kept nudging you back over this way and kept pulling you towards learning more?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I've always told people that like as I would have I predominantly, I should say, like I predominantly just did mushrooms like for I want to say at least 4 or 5 years. I didn't do anything else. And then as I got out of high school, I think I tried acid for the first time like just right after high school or something. And then started being curious and exploring other things. But basically psilocybin mushrooms was the foundation and all I was interested in for a while. And then what I was gonna say though is I'd always tell people that like I'd have these deep experiences, and usually it would be with like small groups, like intimate circles, and then more just recreationally to having fun. But there'd always be that moment where I'd be like stepping away and then like having these like just like moments where I'd feel like communication with the universe, and just like open, like my heart kind of opening up to things that I felt like I was meant to like tap into. And then essentially I would always have these like profound takeaways where I could really sense that I was meant to like tap into that space that I was like feeling gravitated towards. And it felt like I would have revelations or insights, and then at the end of these experiences I would have like a puzzle piece in my hand or like in my heart or in my energetic field, so to speak. And then and then like month, 2 months, whatever, however much longer later, I'd have another experience, and I'd always have that moment, and then I'd have another puzzle piece.
Yeah.
And it was like years of like collecting puzzle pieces.
Hmm.
And it finally hit me one day. I'll never forget it. Like I was with my cousin Jesse, and like we were at my house, and we were just in my room. It was just me and him, and we were just going deep, and we were just talking. And I was just like, I sat up, and I was just like, man, I feel like they're all gonna fit together. It's just like there's a big story here that's unfolding, and I'm about to figure it out. And it's just like this revelation coming in, like tough, and like I just like felt all this like strong insight that I knew I was on the precipice of unveiling. And then yeah, it dawned on me like I feel like I figured it out honestly, and like this is the like I should say like words to me like they have like they're just symbols, like they all have limitations, and I understand like the words that I resonate with
Mm-hmm.
might not be words that other people resonate with. So I'll say that as like a subtle disclaimer, but essentially like what I come to realize and I've concluded through all my experiences is that all the puzzle pieces come together to give me this grand understanding that we're all connected, that we are all just one energy experiencing ourselves as an individual, but we're all connected to one source. And if you want to call that God, call it God. If you want to call it the universe, energy, Allah, I don't care. The words I choose is I interchange all of them because they're all the same to me.
Mm-hmm.
I just like to, acknowledge that it's just the source of me, or the source of everything, really. So the puzzle pieces come together, and I'm understanding that like we're all the same, that we're all basically just trying to live our life, and like what a miracle and a gift it is to breathe and to have this experience of polarity and duality of the contrast of all things. And as I tapped into that and I started to like use my own power, use my own words, and just like convict that understanding, like things started just getting more powerful for me. It was like I was activating a new dimension, or like a new field of awareness, or
Damn, just in everything you did in life.
yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, it was like, so it's like synchronicity started unfolding. Like I would acknowledge that and like communicate with the universe, like, all right, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm like, I'm tapped in, like listening to my intuition, surrendered to the guidance, let's go. And then people start showing up, relationships, I'd feel gravitated towards things, and then like little by little I'm getting guided towards going to Peru eventually, like fast forward a little bit, but keep continuing that trajectory of doing self work and listening and trying to learn. And then along the way, like some of the things that I just rolled out as far as how we introed this thing, I'm like trying to understand too, like, well, how is this even possible? How's this like mushroom that indigenous people are saying is sacred and awesome and magical, but then now it's illegal and you go to jail and it's got no medical value and it's addictive. So you got this huge contrasting thing going on. And then, like you're trying to figure it out and be in right relationship with like the substance that I'm choosing to use, but also not be taking like unnecessary risks for like any like reason that I may have like created like a delusion around. And it's like I'm like really trying to check myself is what I'm saying, that
Just to
like
like make sure it's all legit and just
yeah,
keep
like
yourself
like
in
like
check of.
yeah, I'm like I'm not losing my mind, I'm like I'm actually tapped into something that's real, and I'm not just um going away from like what is meant for me, or actually aligned with my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then once you start doing the research and like really seeing how the history is unfolded and understanding a lot about like where these cultures come from, I'm actually also mostly Mexican and connected to, I have like indigenous blood from Central America, in the Chihuahua, Durango, Mexico area. So come to find out, like, oh yeah, like I actually am carrying some genetics here from some of these tribal ancestors. Makes sense that like I'm tapping into some of this stuff maybe.
That's tight.
Yeah, it kind of it's like starts to make sense as you ask the questions, and then the answers are provided, and you just get these like resonances of truth, where you're just like, oh yeah, that's just the truth. That's, I feel it with like deep inside me.
Damn, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, let's stick. You touched on it. Your recent, it's pretty recent, big trip to Peru to
Mm-hmm.
kind of have your own experience of becoming a man and spending your time with the medicine and just yourself. Um, Silly question, but you were saying when you were with your buddies and you took your first experience with psychedelics, you were doing the little things like tickling each other and just like making funny noises. And I'm sure that was a blast and just like something you never experienced, but it was fun and light.
Mm-hmm.
While you were in such a deep moment, tripping balls basically on ayahuasca in the middle of nowhere by yourself, probably scared. Was there any little things like you saw an ant running with like a leaf and you're like, that dude's so strong? Like any little things that stood out where you're just like, that's tight.
Oh,
Like just small scale, just super bright, cool things that stuck out while you're still getting this giant ball of knowledge dropped on your head.
well, okay. So yes and no to a degree. Yes, because there's insane like qualities of the experience that stand out like all the time, like with visions, like colors, revelations of possible past lives, or just different insights that come in very interesting and profound ways. So there's always these things that I'm experiencing in my visions. But then the tribe that I work with is called Shipibo. And the way that they work is we do our ceremonies at night and it's all in the dark.
Oh.
So it's very internal. So that's why I say no,
And
because
it's like a 6-8 hour experience, isn't it? Something like that.
yeah, yeah. So it's about it depends on the energy of the group and how deep naturally just like people are going. It'll vary, but roughly 6 hours is probably the most accurate. Sometimes a little bit longer, but basically we will start our ceremony like around 9 and it's getting dark. We wait for it to get as dark as we can out in the jungle, but usually about 9 o'clock. And then the lights go out. You have your candles like as everything's kind of getting set up and everyone's getting in their place, and you open the circle with prayers and such. And then once the ceremony starts, lights, candles go out, and you're just on your mat, and it's just you and the medicine. And it's like pitch black essentially, but your eyes adapt, and you're starting to like kind of see into the maloka, the sacred space, and you start to attune to that like darker contrast. And basically, about an hour in, you'll start having some less than an hour, you'll have some sensations, but about an hour, you're usually in the medicine. The medicine's on, or they'll say that you're in the Mariación, which is the indigenous way of saying like the medicine's turning on.
Mm.
And you essentially will always have a different experience. It's not a one size fits all. It's very unique. It's very personal. It's very just connected to what is present in your life. Essentially, all psychedelics are amplifiers. Like they will essentially accentuate what you're bringing to the moment. So that's why there's like a really strong motivation towards creating intentions. And when you start working with the medicines, psychedelics intentionally, it's a completely different ball game than when you're just eating some mushrooms with your friends and like tickling each other.
Yeah.
So that's when you're stepping into like the self work, the possibilities of evolution or spiritual quest, just evolving and like stepping up in a way that can really shed some limitations or layers of yourself that's holding yourself back from like being your full self, where you start getting into like the therapeutic benefits and such. So basically, depending on what your intention is for that particular evening, the medicine will start to present a psychology. It's like you're telling a story to yourself, or you're witnessing your own story. You're in a dialogue with the medicine, but it's you, because it's really like one and the same. But the medicine's bolstering this like dialogue, and it's kind of like supporting you into asking the right questions. And sometimes it provides symbology or images or archetypes, visions that can help you make sense of the psychology or the situation, the blockages that's holding you back from whatever your intention is. The last time I went was the deepest experience that I've had. And I was about to just present the different ways like your intention creates your experience. And so this last time I went was the first time I did a isolation dieta. So this is a huge context that we could go in pretty deep on, which I did the last radio show that you heard and we talked about. We can touch on it and we can go as deep as you like, but to kind of give you the idea here is essentially with the Shipibo tribe specifically, their modality or their main interest is to get you to diet plants that aren't ayahuasca. And so what they do is they usually will have like a ceremony with you, and they'll ask Pachamama is like the way they talk to Earth. They which is just Mother Nature, is just like the way they like to call it. And they'll ask the universe and just say like, hey, what plant is meant for this person, given what they're interested in. So my interest this last time I went was like, I'm here to learn. I'm here to evolve and figure out how to be of service. I'm here to tap into my voice and find my song. And so like the way the Shipibo work when you're in ceremony, I'm kind of jumping around, but I'll just kind of scratch it and then we'll see where it goes. The way that they work with you essentially is that when you're in ceremony and a shaman comes sits in front of you and you're full on in the medicine, you're seeing and feeling energies like no other. The shaman's on that same level, and they like for you to come sit up in like a meditative space or a comfortable seat, and they'll like look at your field and they're like reading your aura and they're like tuning into like where there might be binds in your energetic field, where might there be like contraction and like holding patterns that you're gripping that usually come from trauma or come from pain or psychological blockages of some sort. And then they sing you a song that they learned from the plants that is designed to get in and unwind the contraction in your energetic field. So you're sitting up, you're so expansive, you got this so many sensations going on, and you have this indigenous shaman elder singing this beautiful, beautiful song that's just penetrating your energetic field and making you feel all sorts of things. And what it's doing is it's helping you open up to expand your consciousness, and so the medicine can fully come through you, and you're not holding, you're not resisting, you're just opening up to what's possible, or what the insight, what the solution is going to be given your intention in that direction. And so the song that they sing to you is called an ikaro. It's a medicine song that they learn from the plants. So my intention was to go do a dieta, do a plant, to specifically work with a plant that the shaman was going to assign to me, so I can tap into my own song, my own plant medicine resonance or frequency that I can attune to from the plant kingdom. So with that being my intention, that like is going to bring up some interesting, pretty broad things that can point out like where I might have blockages in that process. But that's what I was doing, and that was part of my intention. And I was working in that direction pretty much every ceremony. And in that process, this was the first time I had done a dieta before, but I've never done it in isolation. So there's kind of levels, like you can do a week, you can do 2 weeks. Usually they like to have you at least do like 10 days or 2 weeks. It's kind of like the minimum. And then usually they like to have you be like minimal interaction with other people, but you can interact with other people, and there's usually a lot of conversation because so many cool people at the retreat. You're just like, oh man, who are you, where are you from, what's your story? You can imagine, like a lot of really cool dialogue unfolds, but everyone's there to do healing and work on yourself. So this was the first time I ever went in with the intention of going in full isolation, where I'm not going to interact or talk to anybody besides my shaman, my translator, and like the kitchen people that just bring me my food, basically. So that was what I was working on, and I did that for a month. I was there for 5 weeks, but I did 4 weeks straight for isolation.
That's so crazy.
And yeah, it was intense. Definitely like didn't like necessarily like hit a like any particular destination that like I was like wanting. I'm just like another step up on the rung of the ladder of like my self-growth, so to speak.
You just got some more puzzle pieces. And
exactly, yeah, just more puzzle pieces that are kind of weaving their way into this like tapestry of my purpose. And kind of on that journey, and I have a lot of work to do. So that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm focusing on. And how the medicine chose to work with me with that intention was very much just showing me like where my own insecurities, where my own limitations and pain, just traumas, different things that kind of hold me back from like truly expressing myself and truly being willing to be vulnerable and open up and share my truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what's sticking out to me is just how profound being you and your shaman both, for lack of a better term, tripping balls and sitting there alone, and him figuring out this song to sing to you while you're experiencing what you are. Like, I remember I was like a freshman at a baseball tournament over in Seattle, and I smoked weed with my pitcher, and we both just laid in the freaking beds at a Motel 8 listening to Pearl Jam. And that was a monumental moment in my life, of just hearing music with a little bit of weed, like a little bit of music. Like, that alone is crazy. That stuck with me. Like, I'm trying to wrap my head around how crazy this dude getting a song from a plant that you've been working with for a month, like that's crazy.
Yeah, I'm still dumbfounded or flabbergasted myself, honestly.
Does it ever like play through your head? Like, can you remember the song that he was singing? Does that ever just like
oh yeah,
run through your head every now and again?
It's deep into my psyche. I mean, it's not just one song. Like, depending on like where you're at in the moment, he can sing and weave several plants into the moment that he's singing to you. And there's the two I was working with, actually a husband and wife, and they were both coming through. Usually they both sing to you once or twice. But yeah, their songs are like deep into my psyche. Like I can hear them like even right now, honestly. Like I can just like.
So I'm kind of picturing, like, if I have a kink in my neck, I'm going to go see a chiropractor. They're going to find out maybe it's the right side of my body that's actually hurting the left side. They'll find it because they've studied anatomy, and they'll do these certain rubs, and then, oh, cool, it's fixed. Is that kind of the same thing with like because ultimately sound is just vibrations hitting your eardrums or whatever, right? So it's technically a physical thing. Do you feel like it just worms its way into your being and just kind of irons everything out and goes in and pinpoints what's something down here is hurting something up here, and this song just kind of massages it out, and this kind of melts away? That's what I'm seeing in my head. Is that kind of what it is on a spiritual internal level?
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. You'll feel energy moving in through your body. You'll essentially feel a blockage of like a flow, like, because you can feel like the energy trying to flow through you, and it usually will hit somewhere where you're just like, you might be like, oh no, like, oh, I don't like that, like that doesn't feel good, and then you're like, ooh, what is that? And then a dialogue opens up. Yeah, what is that? Like, and then the song's coming in, and you're like, wow, like, ooh, he's singing loud right now, like, oh, and like you're getting more and more uncomfortable. It's like something's unfolding, something's about to pop, something's breaking through right there, and you're like psychically tapping into something. And if you keep going with it, if you just let go and trust in the medicine and know like what's coming is also going. So like you might like not like what's coming in right now, but it's just temporary and it's going to move through you. And if you keep allowing the flow of energy to come and go, then you're going to have the effects usually that you want to happen. And essentially you'll have that point where that holding or that gripping will start to release, and you will start to actually feel really, really, really good. And usually what will come, as I mentioned before, is like visions of like something symbolic, like oh, like oh, I don't like that, like oh, and then all of a sudden like you're like surrendering and you're letting go, and then like whoa, memory of like when I lost my dog, and it hurt and I cried, and I held on to that, and I created all these psychological stories around it, and then all of a sudden it affected me in a way that is still impacting me today. And like hypothetically speaking, you might have scenarios that start to present themselves to you like that, and you start to realize like that your body's the wisdom keeper of your whole life. Like there's emotional data and stories, origins of your whole life that's essentially trapped in the body. That's what we can understand through science and of traumas, that the traumas are the emotional frequency of the moment that a very strong, impactful situation unfolded and got trapped into the body. And then there's where you have this like post-traumatic stress because it's in the body. And the ayahuasca is assisting you in somatically letting go and releasing and confronting, but then also letting go and alleviating to where you're no longer going to have to hold that contraction.
Damn, and just like, like, we'll bring it back to something I can actually relate to. If you do have a knot in your back that you don't even know is there, it's hurting your neck, you might not even know this trauma that's been building up that's affecting all these little aspects of your life. So, relating to that, what type of like person or like what type of situations would you recommend? And I don't know if you can say recommend or like say what type of person should be doing stuff like this, but what type of person do you think should maybe look into maybe even starting with psilocybin mushrooms and then moving up however they see fit into ultimately a big crazy trip like this to unlock all these things that have been built up?
Yeah, good question.
And then like who would you say like probably like go see traditional counselor or therapist, maybe stay away from this kind of thing?
Yeah, so I'll start with the latter. It gets a little easier to answer or simple. Essentially, psychedelics aren't for people that are psychically unhinged and unstable. Any sort of psychosis or schizophrenic mental health type issues that you're just really unstable, bipolar, things like that, they're not recommended for psychedelics. Psychedelics still are safe to use with people that have those types of situations, but it's way more critical and it's like way more important to have the right dose and the right set and setting, and like it's just a very finicky situation where you basically shouldn't do it unless you know you're working with the right people and they know how to work with your particular psyche. So anything like that is usually a red flag to not necessarily approach on your own, at least. And then who is ready or the right person for this modality would be somebody who's just ready to make a change, and they maybe are going through depression, anxiety, addiction, or just ready to evolve and explore their own consciousness, or maybe someone that's I should say like someone that's disconnected like from their purpose, that doesn't really feel like there's much direction or purpose to life, because these medicines are really good at reconnecting you with that direction of where you're headed and what the meaning of life or your purpose, like what it is that you're doing here. Anyone that's on the journey for just health and wellness can benefit from it. I would say that you definitely just need to be ripe and ready for facing yourself. So if you don't feel like you're ready to engage with the unconscious shadows, like the parts of yourself that are hiding from your conscious self that maybe they're like looming in the darkness, and they're probably suppressed, essentially, from things that are very uncomfortable. If you don't feel capable and ready to unveil the shadows of yourself, then this modality might be a little tough, but it's still approachable with the right dose, the right set and setting, the right substance. You don't necessarily jump right into ayahuasca unless you unless you feel capable and like you want to and you want to go deep. But starting something simple, like you could microdose ayahuasca or microdose psilocybin. I was gonna say you can microdose ayahuasca too. But starting with something different, it's like the right approach, just like you would see a doctor. They don't just straight write you a script for like the heavy hitter right out the gate, you know, like they're gonna experiment and find the right situation that's gonna be appropriate for your disease or your situation. Same thing with this modality. You need to find the right medicine and situation that's going to be best for your psyche and your intention. It depends on what your intention is. But it could be something simple. It's just like, I'm over like these bad habits that I have, and like I'm over like hanging out with the wrong people, and I keep getting dragged into situations that like get me in trouble or whatever, and I don't know why I keep doing that, but I'm just like gravitating towards like the wrong energies. It could be something as simple as that, or it could be like, man, I'm like really addicted to going out and doing blow every weekend, and it's like fucking up my life or whatever the situation is, and like you're just trying to shift some energy in your world one way or another. And it could be just that you're feeling like your heart closed, like I have a hard time connecting with people. Like I don't feel capable of being seen and like offering like validation for other people, or just being a human and connecting. Like it could be something like that. So the spectrum's like really broad. It's pretty profound actually, like how many different benefits and directions that these medicines can support people in. But it's it's definitely something for people that are like ready to be courageous and like take on the journey of self-growth and healing.
So now, would you say? Because I know from personal experience that like antidepressants and anti-anxiety medicine, little stuff like that, they sometimes if you go through 20, you might find one that will make you feel a little bit better while you're taking it. But then once you're done taking it, or like realize that I don't I don't feel like I should be having to take this so I can feel normal, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there is a difference compared to getting this pill from a doctor, taking it every day to feel at what your baseline should be, compared to if you do take your own journey with psychedelics? Is that going to be something where you kind of have to keep re-upping, or is it something where that you get that experience and it sticks with you, and like you jam your own puzzle piece in yourself and it just kind of stays there?
Okay, that's a great question. So the original research on this actually shows that like after you have your experience, and this is like for pretty much, this is all psychedelics, it'll vary about a week, but you have about, the brain chemistry will sustain itself for about 3 weeks. So all these traditional psychedelics, besides ketamine, I didn't really mention ketamine, but LSD, psilocybin, ayahuasca, DMT, they all work on San Pedro, peyote. They all work on the serotonin receptor, and so depression is something that is basically complications with like your serotonin release and uptake. And so those are all mimicking the way that the molecule is formulated. Is it actually looks just like the serotonin molecule, but it'll have like an extra oxygen molecule, or it'll have like an extra addition of some sort with the chemistry, and it'll all hit the same receptor. And then for about 3 weeks you'll sustain that brain chemistry, and you'll be experiencing the afterglow, or like the effects that you would like to sustain. And then usually about that 3 week mark, some of the neuroplasticity or the genesis that the brain was connecting, because what'll happen is it'll create coherence and cohesiveness in the brain too. So it's mimicking serotonin, but it'll also dampen something called the default mode network, which is which is where like a lot of rumination of like your past, like self judgment, and like where depressive type patterns will come out of. That will all get dampened, and then you have like connection for different parts of your brain that start to communicate that otherwise wouldn't. So you'll have that whole entourage like unfolding for about 3 weeks, and then about that 3rd week mark, it'll start to slowly fade. Some of the neuroplasticity will dim down, and then it's up to the person on how much like integration work that they did to continue the direction that they just created for themselves. So that's what I'm doing now as like a profession, and establishing a career around is actually helping people get support around creating long-term change. So you don't necessarily have to do psychedelics every 3 weeks or anything like that. You can create that brain chemistry. And what you're doing is you're creating new pathways that you want to sustain and hardwire in the way that you hardwire it or create long-lasting sustainable change is through rehearsing and integrating the new behaviors. So depending on the person, like how much they're actually doing the work, so to speak, and working through the shit that's connected to the problem and creating the new behaviors, you can actually sustain that chemistry and hardwire the new networks into the person that you want to be.
So kind of the psychedelics will, like, let's say your thoughts and your feelings, taking the psychedelics kind of make them into a softer clay, and then you can choose whether to form them and throw them in the kiln or let it harden up back to how it was.
Mm-hmm.
Take the psychedelic again, have that moldable clay, and then but you still have to do the work to mold it how you want, and then throw it in the kiln, and then that should stick for a little bit,
Yeah,
Something
exactly.
like that.
The more you do the work and integrate, the more the sustainability will unfold. If you're just relying on the experience and you just had an awesome experience and it was great and you're just going to go back to the way things were and you start hanging out with the same people or whatever it is that brought you into the situation that made you need the modality to begin with, you're going to go right back to it in a few weeks essentially and fall
Makes
back.
sense.
And
Yeah.
so that's why a lot of people that do psychedelics or whatever aren't necessarily like, like doing great for themselves. Like not everybody is. Like there's a lot of people that make good use out of the practice, but you have to do the work. It's like that's something that I'm like really honing in around right now myself because I did psychedelics organically, recreationally for so long, and just like music festivals and such, and I did start to step away and like do my own like spiritual quests like by myself and like do my own thing but like intentionally, but it took a long time and like I didn't have any education or any like nobody told me like, hey, you got to integrate these experiences and like
Right.
start putting practice into it, like that, take that revelation and like start making a formula for like every day that you can apply to like making long lasting change. And like that wasn't happening. So here I am today, like realizing that like it's so important, and if you actually want to be the person that you say you want to be and like manifest those intentions, then you got to rehearse the behaviors that are going to create the hardwiring network that you want.
Damn, that's crazy. Now I know like Oregon kind of declassified all drugs, and I think even Washington too is kind of introducing psilocybin to like PTSD, stuff like that, kind of making it a little more available for like the regular person that doesn't want to just go to a drug dealer or go all the way out to Peru to get something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Where can like, is it getting to the point where you can find the right doctor and be like, hey, I think this is like I've tried all this stuff, haven't really seen any benefits. I've heard a lot of good stuff about psilocybin treatment or ketamine treatment with combined with like therapy and stuff like that. Is there anything like in Washington State, for example, that people can go and kind of look for right now, or is that
Okay,
on the way still?
so yes, there is, but also kind of no. Okay, so this is really interesting. It's like I mentioned right at the intro, this is like a budding field that there's a lot of innovation that's being manifested right now, and I'm part of that. Like I'm definitely innovating and like trying to figure out the right way to roll out my own expertise and like offerings to the public. But that being said, challenged by the process of laws and this like all this misinformation from the past that's catching up with all the current research and studies that's changing the laws right now. And so, as you mentioned, it's Portland's the only city currently that you can go do psilocybin clinical sessions with therapists. That's the first thing to get rolled out. They're kind of leading with the torch right now. They have the clinical MDMA sessions as well through Portland. And then Washington State, it was February of last year, they revoked a law that was basically saying that they had all these different ways of categorizing like personal drug use for like making it illegal, that they revoked, and they said that it's inconstitutional essentially. And so this is pretty new. For the last year, you can actually have a personal amount of any drug in Washington State, but you can't distribute, sell, or buy. But it's okay to have it.
It makes sense. That completely makes sense.
Yeah. So,
What?
right. It's just like the most weirdest thing, but that's kind of where it's currently at. Washington State, you can have things, but you can't buy them, you can't sell them. But there's no law around it. And so I am aware of people that are out to the public right now that are doing psychedelic sitting, and but you have to get the substance yourself, and because people cannot provide it for you legally. There is a lot of underground things going on outside of what's legal. Can't really plug any of that, but I will throw out this because I just found out about them and they seem to be in good reverence, and I'll shout out to them. But there's a Washington State has a duo of two males. They're called psychedelic passages, and I think they're Seattle based, but they travel all around Washington State, and they will hold ceremonies or sessions with you, but you have to get your own substance. So things like that are being innovated. And as I said, I'm still in the process of trying to figure out where exactly I want to roll out what I'm capable of and do it in the right, safe, responsible manner. But we're still kind of on that precipice. And so we're going to see a lot of this stuff shift. Washington State is supposed to be probably the next in line. We'll probably see California and Washington jump right on the train with the clinical stuff with the psilocybin and the MDMA. Ketamine is currently legal. I actually just did a peer monitoring ketamine session with a friend of mine who I'm supporting through a integration process last week. And so there's I don't know how many people know this, but you can use ketamine for depression too. It doesn't work on the serotonin receptor, but it works on the GABA, and it accentuates your neurons, and so it still helps your brain work out of the funk of different things that you might get in the divot of. But ketamine's legal, it's available. Spokane's got clinics here you can go do, but there's actually another program that you can just sign up for online that my buddy did called Mind Bloom, and you can it pops up on Facebook and stuff these days. You just click on it, see a doctor online, and they'll send you a little at-home kit. Wow. And then for safety, you have to have a peer monitor. That's what I did for my friend. Someone that's there to just kind of be on standby for the requirements of the formalities. But things like that's available. But we'll probably see Washington State roll out the MDMA and the psilocybin within the next year or two, for sure.
Moving in the right direction. You were saying that you are legally allowed to sell and distribute ayahuasca without DMT in it. Yeah. So to me, that kind of is that what is left of ayahuasca without the DMT part first? Just because I'm curious.
Totally. So the active ingredient in the vine, so just so you know, ayahuasca is a vine. Ayahuasca that you drink in ceremony is a combination of the vine with a mixture of another leaf, usually, that's called chacruna. Chacruna has the DMT in it. And so that usually is what you drink when you're going to go in ceremony and have the more traditional psychedelic effects. The vine itself is only very, very mildly psychedelic. It's not very psychedelic. You'd have to drink a good amount of it to even notice the psychedelic aspects of it. It's very sub-perceptual in that sense. But what's left in it is the beta carbolines. So they're called harmine, harmaline, and tetrahydroharmaline. And what they are is they're MAOI inhibitors, or beta carbolines, and essentially what they do is that's what makes the mimicry of the serotonin that I referenced earlier. And so those will fit into the serotonin receptors and start to mimic what it would feel like as if you were producing serotonin naturally.
Oh, tight.
Yeah. So with depression, essentially you're having complications with your serotonin, and with that too, I'll add in as well that there's a lot of energetics with the ayahuasca, to the degree that if you're in a bad mood, like when you're in the jungle, like you're not even supposed to be around the process of like making the medicine.
Dang.
Like they really want like the space that everyone that's contributing to like creating this like sacred brew, that you're bringing in prayers for humanity, like you're bringing in like the purest intentions from your heart and such. And there's a lot of research on like the process is just water in a vine, and there's a lot of research around like your own energy creating structurization with water molecules. And so when you have groups of people that are praying with this like sacred brew, you're essentially structurizing the water, and you're creating energetic crystals that are aligned with the intentions of the people that did it. And so you have the beta carbolines, you have the metaphysical structurization of the water crystals, and you have an ancient history of this collective intention of this brew being used for this reason of self-discovery, healing, and growth. And so what ends up happening, and I kind of add that metaphysical aspect because it is a pretty strong like pivotal piece of like what ends up unfolding when you use it regularly. Cumulatively, when you start microdosing, you're only taking like 5 to 10 drops usually under the tongue once or twice a day. And you'll notice like it depends on the person, I should say, too. Like some people are a little more less sensitive, and they don't necessarily notice like what's going in their body and like how it's affecting them. But if you're like if you're if you're a sensitive person and you're pretty in tune with your body, you'll notice the effects like pretty quickly. Like
What kind of effects would those be? Because I've microdosed like psilocybin before, and it's kind of similar where things make it's a little harder to get irritated. I'm just a little less grumpy for no reason. Colors look a little bit cooler. Like music sounds a little bit more intriguing. Little stuff like that that you can, like, if once you're looking for, you can definitely see stuff like that. So what's kind of the effects of microdosing this?
So because you're getting that mimicry of the serotonin, you're gonna feel like a little bit more bubbly, a little bit more jovial, like happiness, just like a little natural like uplift in that sense. And then all the energetics aspects that I mentioned in the metaphysical is mostly attuned to like the opening of your heart. And so like you get this like jovial like neuron brain chemistry like feeling there, and then you have this like sense of like wanting to like connect with people, like your heart's open, like you just like it's just something simple, like we run into each other at the gym, and instead of just like me maybe not acknowledging you, maybe if I'm like microdosing a little consistently, I'm like I want to make eye contact, I want to give you what's up, I might dab you up and like come like give you like a moment of connection just because
it feels good.
Yeah, just because my heart's open, you know. So there's like that direction, and as you start to work with the medicine regularly and cumulatively allow it to become a part of who you are in your energetic field, you're slowly just budding your whole being into that direction of like being more compassionate. And I should say, like if you're coming to this from like a point of like depression, obviously like you're not just gonna go start dabbing people up and opening your heart right away. You're gonna be in a process of like confronting or like seeing what is actually affecting you and like what's holding you back from being able to do that, being able to just connect with people and feel your self-worth, feel like the value of who you are. So that like that's kind of where the medicine's going to lead you. It's going to start, it'll be like an organic moment where you're maybe like going about your day, because you're just microdosing. You still got to go to work, you're still going to go do your grind or whatever. And then all of a sudden like you have this moment where you just feel inspired, like out of nowhere, like there's this wave of energy that comes in. Like I've had it happen to me several times where I'll be in the kitchen like just doing dishes or whatever, and all of a sudden I just feel like this tune or like this rhythm come through me, and all of a sudden I'm like singing like a line or two of something, and I'm just like whoa, and then and like I'm like that's cool, and then like I don't even realize that it's that ayahuasca like at first, like it's just like it happens, and then next thing I know, like I realized it like a moment or two later, like wow, thank you ayahuasca.
So
like
cool.
like
It's so crazy that that's like illegal basically and has been shunned and thrown in darkness for so long, because like literally 10 out of 10 every one of the antidepressants and stuff that anybody gets. The doctors, well, I've had to ask them like, hey, am I going to be able to perform in the bedroom the same? Am I gonna go want to kill myself if this doesn't go good? Am I gonna is my skin gonna break out? Am I not gonna be able to work out? And am I gonna gain 10 pounds?
Yeah.
Every single one of them, one of those is like, honestly, probably, but
Yeah.
it also might make you feel better.
Yeah.
Is there anything like, it seems like, what's 4 drops of this liquid gonna do that's anywhere close to have, even if it doesn't perform how it might have in the examples you gave, it's surely not going to have equal downsides to these pharmaceutical multi-billion-dollar company tool they have to make their money. Like, this pill with all these bad side effects that will happen, maybe not all of them, but there's going to be some side effects to go with it, and it might help you, versus this that's most likely going to help you with very, very minuscule downfall.
Exactly.
So like, is there any, so let's say 4 or 5 drops of this ayahuasca that you have, what's, if I started taking it, am I going to be able to perform in the bedroom? Am I going to have terrible outbreaks on my skin? Am I going to start beating my girlfriend all of a sudden? Like, I just don't see any of that stuff happening.
Yeah, no. It's we'll say the side effects are it just seems ridiculous, honestly. The side effects are gonna be you're gonna smile more. You're gonna want to meet your woman in the bedroom more. If anything, like, you're gonna just feel your love for her grow. You're gonna we haven't talked much about it, but there's a purifying detoxification effect too. So it's gonna actually cleanse your body. It's gonna clean out and remediate toxins, and it's gonna, so that being said, this actually might be a more traditional side effect mentionable. If you are the type of person that eats dirty and like eats candies or things that are just full of toxins and such, you might feel like a little bit of like the butting heads of like the ayahuasca meeting some impurities in your body. Like there's definitely, with microdosing, it's so subtle, but like I said, the more you tune into it and the more you do it, the more you're going to notice like there's going to be these like subtle energetics. And so there will be like a subtle energetic of like that, like something's kind of making you feel like you want to like go for a walk and exercise or like read a book or something that's healthy, and then whatever the old habit is that's maybe leading to the depressive stuff or just a part of like your past that's there, you're gonna feel like a contrast. Like there's that it's very subtle, but there is a side effect of that process unfolding,
which ultimately is good for your body and good for your soul, of kind of telling you like, this is bad. There's like, I'm just letting you know this. You're not helping yourself out here. So it's, I mean, of all the bad things that could happen, that's like the best thing you could ask for. It's just so crazy that this isn't everywhere. There should be Starbucks next to it. Should be get your microdose along the way,
right?
This is gonna help you a lot more than your cup of Joe is.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, if the powers that be actually had our best interest in mind, it would be probably something along those lines. And it's that's why it just made me kind of pause for a moment to think about the side effects, because it's just so synergistic. It's just like, if it comes out of the earth, your body, like, it usually receives it pretty well. Like there's definitely some complications with some people's bio individuality with certain plants and such, but they're, for the most part, like the body's pretty capable of like being synergistic with the plants.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. My lady sponsored by supplement companies, and she's always on the move, so she drinks a bunch of energy drinks and loves energy drinks. She's a connoisseur. But this past week she's been trying coffees, like with pumpkin in them, but coffees. And she's like, whoa. And I'm like, yeah, it's real caffeine.
Yeah.
Like, it hits different. Huh? And she's like, she's just like, doesn't know what to do with herself, because it's like real caffeine. So the body does know what to do with stuff that's out there for us, not manufactured in a lab. It's crazy. That's a tiny example, but for sure there's a huge difference between a cup of coffee and like a Red Bull.
Definitely, yeah. you know, we're nature. Like the human body is nature. So if you nature and nature, like it just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where are you at right now? Look, would you consider yourself like a shaman quite yet, or do you have to? Is that like the black belt of all of this?
Yes, it definitely is. Triple black belt.
Yeah.
uh, no, I'm certainly not a shaman.
Is that kind of where you, if everything happens right and like you can have your own facility and you can import and test the quality of every substance, and then obviously you've been putting in the work to understand how to use it and how to guide people through this medicine. Is that something where you kind of ultimately see yourself if everything else plays out kind of and works in the same direction that you're moving?
Yeah, I mean the vision is I got some property up north. I'm trying to make a retreat center where we can do this type of work. Hopefully do it like not hopefully like do it legally. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm waiting for the world to catch up with like where I see it going. But yeah, moving in that direction of just being like a sacred facilitator, like someone that is just an ally for the plants. Like I don't really like the labels of anything. I would never call myself a shaman, even if I did this for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, just like a medicine keeper, of like a
Is that kind of
supporter.
the same lingo as like tripping or on psychedelic trip? Is that kind of same catalog of vocabulary?
What part?
Just like saying you're a shaman or like I'm tripping or I'm
Oh
on a
yeah, yeah,
psychedelic trip. It's more of
yeah.
like you use experience the
It's
whole time
funny.
and
It's a loaded word for sure. Like it's originally from like Siberia, but like we really kind of correlate it more to like South America and like more like probably like African or Australians, but um, essentially like that to me like it's like the most highest like revered like it's like kind of title so to speak, but like I just know what truly goes into being a shaman. Like the shamans that I've worked with I think like maybe like six of them like indigenous ones, and all Shipibo, or five of them are Shipibo. I think one of them was had some other lineage, but they like literally started doing dietas. Like so, I did the isolation dieta. Just for example, I did the 4 weeks. I've been working my way up to this like from freshman year or after freshman year to in my 30s, and I just got to the point where I'm like ready for the isolation dieta. Here's the big one. I'm gonna go Peru and do the big journey. The shamans like they're doing isolation dietas like multiple times a month, like in their as kids.
okay.
Like they're this is their everyday life. It's their culture. Like their mom, their dad, their grandma is like, here's this plant, this is how you do it, this is what it does for other people, here's the medicine song, I'm gonna sing it to you, and
Mm.
we're gonna practice and learn this together. And they're just so immersed, like it's like there's no way we could catch up to like
That ship has sailed.
yeah, it's just like we just need to revere them and like respect them, and um, pay our respects and recognize that like we have a lot to learn from them. They have a lot to learn from us too.
Mm-hmm.
It goes both ways for sure, because we have a lot of the science and like different things that like integration work that we can like really break down some nuances of like Western psychology that they don't really necessarily have like a complete hold on that we can, but they are the like the creme de la creme as far as like learning like the energetics of plants and like the ayahuasca. Like there's different types of shamans. Like so we're talking about ayahuasqueros, people that work specifically with ayahuasca, or curanderos, healers that work for the all the Amazon plants. But we're talking like, gosh, I think I heard it. It's like we only know like 8% of the plants in the jungle, and
Damn.
like we know like insane amount of plants, and like we only know 8%, and so they know that they've gone their whole life like getting to know these plants very intimately, and I can spend 4 weeks in the jungle and like save my time and energy and resources to make that experience, but it takes so much energy to get that experience, and there's no way that I could like keep doing that to get to like where they already were when they were like 12, you know.
Right. Right.
So it's just a very respectable title or privilege for sure.
Makes sense. I got you. I got you.
Yeah.
Well, that's that. I think you're doing great things for the community and bringing light to something that definitely deserves all the light and sharing your wealth of knowledge and everything like that. It's been great, and I hope that everybody else loves it as much as I did. I learned a hell of a lot, and
For sure.
thanks for coming through and talking about it and sharing your experiences. It's all as personal as it gets, so thank you for being open with everything. It's really enlightening.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's an honor to share this modality. I just feel privileged to even be in the role that the universe has created, and I'm just grateful and down to share. And anyone that's got open ears, like, for sure, like, down to connect and share more if you're interested in the ayahuasca, microdosing, stuff like that.
Where could they find you if they have any questions on
Yeah,
anything like this?
so I'm slow on the social media stuff. So I'm like, I just got Facebook right now. I'm gonna make an Instagram, but I don't have one currently. But if you find me, I'm on Facebook, Mosha Morgan. Hit me up, Messenger, or comment on anything, and we can connect for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great, man.
Yeah, man.
Thank you again.
So
It was
good.
awesome.
Hell yeah. Thank you.
All right, you guys.
Hell yeah.